everyone, and welcome to MDP Central Tea Talks. Thank you for joining us today for this episode called Founding Visions. My name is Derick McKoy Jr., founder and executive artistic director of McKoy Dance Project MDP. And I'm here with a good friend of mine and special guest, the founder, artistic director, and CEO of Shades Dance Theater, Mr. Cameron Terry.
Hello, everyone.
Today, we're going to break up this episode of Tea Talks in three kind of subcategories: forming the business, creating the business, and sustaining the business. Um, just you have two entrepreneurs here who have found their own companies. And in my daily travels, I have received several questions from different people that I've come across with about how did it happen? How are you doing it? Is it also possible for me? So I think this episode of Tea Talk is really important just to share the information from two people who are currently doing it. I'm in my 5th season with McKoy Dance Project, and Cameron is in season 4 with Shades Dance Theater. So we are kind of like definitely in the hustle and bustle right now, and have I think some great nuggets to share about our process. Without a further ado, I'm going to hop into forming the business. My first question, building a company from the ground up. Cameron, what inspired you to create Shades?
Yeah, that is an interesting question. I think that I founded the company on October 25th, which is my birthday. I founded my company on October 25th, 2020. So that March, we had experienced the pandemic, and that March, I was a junior at the University of Oklahoma, and then in October, I was a senior because the school year had started again in August. And I founded the company for a bunch of reasons, but we all saw people lose their lives during the pandemic. And that was very scary and jarring. And one of the things that I asked myself was, if I wasn't able to choreograph anymore, if I wasn't here anymore, like what legacy was I going to leave here? And that became the catalyst for the company. I kind of felt that I was called to start the company because I didn't want to do it at that time. I wanted to be prior to COVID, I wanted to be a freelance choreographer, and I decided to choreograph and set works. And that was the thing that I decided to do. But when I started the company, it was really just because I felt called to do it. And I think that as we talk more throughout this episode, you will really understand the grit and the fortitude that you need to sustain a company, to found a company. You kind of have to be called or possessed to do this type of work. So I really started it because I wanted to leave a legacy, and I wanted to create a space for everybody to come and join together and watch art and dance. And I felt the same way. One of my favorite Ailey quotes, he talks about when Joyce Trishler died, and he was like, oh my God, if Joyce can die, then I can too. So that means I need to live fast. And I kind of felt the same way when I watched people lose their lives to COVID. They weren't sick or anything, and they were just gone. And I was like, well, oh shoot, if this can happen to them, it could definitely happen to me. So I better get this thing going, because I'm not scared of what if I fail. I'm scared of not doing. And so I guess it was kind of like a fear. Like, if I don't get this baby out, if I don't get this idea out, then my life will be for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I started the company.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because COVID, I think, was a awakening for a lot of us, whether it was racial, ethical, moral. Um, it catalyzed me to found MDP, and I tell people that all the time, and not necessarily in the way that you saw, like, what am I leaving behind? Like, your purpose was change. Your purpose was sort of impassioned to push out this project, this baby. And I think for me, my purpose in terms of the work I was doing at that present state of being a professional dancer was sort of catalyst. And as a choreographer too, I didn't see myself as having a company anytime soon. I was like, oh yeah, when I retire from dancing at 35, 40 years old, then I'll start this organization. But COVID kind of fast tracked me on that aspect, in terms of like it forced me to look at what kind of works I was making as a choreographer, what kind of works was I dancing as a dancer. And so social justice really became important for me. Talking about reality versus abstract or fairy tale stories became really important to me. And so that kind of the business came from the founding vision of impact.
Mhm.
talking about real things, real people, real issues, real inequities in society. And that wasn't my strong suit before COVID. I was more like I say, spectacular dance. And COVID really pushed me to sort of relook at my identity as a Black person, as a queer person, but also as a choreographer and dancer. Like I sold myself, and my promise to myself was to not make work for work's sake, but it had to say something about something real. And so if we like sort of narrow down what the vision is to say something real about real issues, about real things of today. Um, which kind of leads is a good segue into the next question. But what's something you wish you knew as you were forming your vision of what your company would originally look like?
I think that what people don't, what I wish I would have known, what people don't understand is that you're building a brand, and there's a brand awareness that has to come when you're forming an organization. And I think that's hard. And I think that when you're founding an organization, you don't know how much founding you're really going to be doing until you're in it. And what I mean by that is it's like, okay, well, it's the company, right? So it's this marketing aspect of who is Shay's Dance Theater, and what are they? Okay, so that's one element of it. But it's also like you need a brand recognition with audience, you need a brand recognition with donors, and then you need a brand recognition with dancers, right? So there's all of this building that you have to do in all these categories. And then to form a well-rounded, structured organization, because it's like, certain dancers of a certain aesthetic will not audition for Alvin Ailey because their training or their aesthetic or their beliefs don't align. But Ailey posts an audition call, what type of dancers are going to show up? When Dancers of Harlem posts an audition call, what type of dancers are going to show up? And that is a brand awareness with dancers that has to be built when you're starting a company. I don't think people tell you about that. I don't think you know about how much founding you're going to be doing as an action verb that you're going to be doing when you're starting this organization. And how important that is to you as an artistic director when you're presenting programming. So everything is you're building every single bucket from scratch, and then it's like, oh, this is a new bucket. So I have the bucket now. I have to build it. I have to fill it, right? So I guess one of the things that I wish I would have known is that founding is an action verb, and it's something that you're going to be doing constantly for a long time. Um, and the company may show signs of stability and be able to hold us on, but then you quickly realize that this bucket is not as filled as it needs to be, and it needs to be some more founding there. So really understanding what it means to be a founder.
Hmm.
Something
Hmm.
that I
I
wish I would
really
have.
resonated with that because I think that sometimes I even forget how reliant the company's brand is on me. It's sort of like, oh, I gave the vision. I have our company values. I have our company words and pillars. I have all these things. And then you expect it to, once you say what it is, put it on paper and tell people what it is, that it's going to grow into its own thing. But every step of the process is, okay, so what are we doing now? Who are we? Are we keeping an integrity with what we said we're doing, or is it now time to pivot? Um, and it's hard work. It's hard work to constantly be the genesis behind the vision or the projection of where the company is going and is currently in its present moment. So yeah, I think that I agree with you. I think that's something that a budding entrepreneur or someone who seeks to be an entrepreneur to own a business or a company um, should really hone in on focusing on who am I as a founder and what am I founding? Um, the stronger your vision is, the stronger your outline. And I'm trying to find a synonym for vision, but the stronger your outline and how you spell out the project or the endeavor, the business endeavor, the more successful you're going to be in getting it off the ground. Um, because the to create an organization is actually fairly easy when we talk about incorporation, um, but the building of the blocks, the sustainability, the building constituents and followers and support in that way is actually the real groundwork, the real gritty part um, of the process. And I
Mhm.
think no one really tells you that there are lots of different ways to start an organization, and not all of them have to be nonprofit, and all of them have to be for profit. Not there can be mixes of the two, and I think that that's also something to important to know. And we'll touch on it when we start to get into creating the business section in a second. But to really do your research, I think is another point to really to recommend and information to get out to other entrepreneurs. Do your research.
Yeah.
Research is not just one moment; it's continuous. Continuously do your
It's
research.
continuous. Yeah, and to put a bow on that, one of the things that I don't think people understand is that you're going to always be talking about who, what, why. And I was had a meeting with some board members, with my board chair, my vice chair, about some cultivation of events because raising money is a thing in the nonprofit world. But I really was challenging them to think about like just really going back to cultivation before we make an ask. And what I mean by that is you're going to spend a lot of time talking about, I say this for my company, who is Shakes Dance Theater? Who are you? That's step one. What are you and what are you doing and what do you want? You're going to be in that circle for a very long time. And I think as founders or as leaders, we don't really understand that. It's like, oh, we've been doing this for 4 or 5 years, but they don't know. And that's going back to that branding, right? Every time you meet somebody new, is who is Shay's Dance Theater? Why do they exist? Why are you here? Why are you? And those are real concrete questions that you have to ask yourself as a founder. So who is Shay's Dance Theater? Why are you? Why do you exist? What do you do? And then it's a tenfold, it's a catch 22, because it's like, who are you? What do you do? But also, what are you in the sense of why do you exist? But what type of company are you? Are you a mixed rep company? Are you a ballot company? So that what and that why is kind of is twofold in the sense of why do you exist, but what type of work do you do? So you're a dance company, okay? So we are a dance company, but what type of dance company? And why do you exist? So you have to always go back to that mission, and you talked about that. That has to be strong, that outline, because when you have that, you can't waver from that. Because every time you meet somebody new, you have to be able to conjure up that abracadabra, that magic to get them invested into this company. You have to ask yourself those things: who are you? What are you? Why do you exist? What are you doing? And what do you want? You got to be able to answer all those things constantly, forever. Even with your grant applications going forward, you got to be able to answer these things in a lot of different ways. So I think that's a challenge as well. It's the constant repetition of having to repeat yourself, because unfortunately it does not stick. It will not stick. Not in the first 4 or 5 years. It's going to take a while for people to get it, and then you have to take it a step further by empowering other people to answer those questions.
Yes, yes, yes. And this is kind of, I wonder if companies like Inu and Dance Company or AIM by Kyle Abraham, um, those companies are not necessarily formed how we formed our companies. We formed companies before our individual brands were actually established. Like people have familiarity with my work, but they don't know me as a major choreographer or a major dancer. I'm still very young in the career. I started the company when I was 22. And so like someone like Kyle or Inoue, is a little bit older than us, but they started companies after their brands were known as individual people. And so when they started these companies, people are like, I'm going to go see Kyle. I'm going to go see Kyle's work. I'm going to go see Inoue. I want to see Inoue's work. But then they hear Shades Dance Theater and they see McKoy Dance Project and they're like, who are you? What are you doing? What do you want me to come see? Why do you want me to come see it? So I would be interested to hear a perspective from someone like Inoue or Kyle about what's the difference in their perspective about that, because that's very interesting. Because that is all the questions. Like when you write grants or appeals, people are like, okay, so why? Why do you want my money? Why do you need my money? Who are you? What are you doing? And your answer has to be uh, thorough enough to the point that they feel that it is worth it. which is the hard part in asking for funding because it has to feel worth it. Otherwise, you're going to keep getting denied. It has to feel unique. And I think that's a lot of frustration for a lot of entrepreneurs and budding entrepreneurs because a lot of funding and a lot of support is already monopolized in the bigger, more historical places.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. So moving us into creating the business, what steps did you take to establish and incorporate your company?
Yeah, so the first thing I did was really try to figure out if I wanted an LLC or a nonprofit and why I settled on the nonprofit model. And what I did was I did a lot of research. So I was Googling Ailey, New York City Ballet, Juilliard, Atlanta Ballet, which is Atlanta, which is where I'm from. And I was really interested in like how were these organizations ran and how were they structured? Because I wanted to build my company to be a beast. And what I mean by that, these are companies with large operating budgets and like big buildings and staff, and they tour whatever the case may be. Even down to Kyle Abraham's company. So I really was curious about their model and their structure. And what I found was that they were all 501c3 nonprofits. And that led me down a rabbit hole of what is the 501c3 nonprofit and how are they ran, how do they govern, which is, a complex business model. I was told by an artistic director in New York of a big ballet company, and they told me that the nonprofit model is weak and it is the most complex business model, and I have to agree. But that was what it took to form an organization because I knew that I couldn't go a different route and not be and not have the structure of the great companies that because it's proven to be sustainable and it works. So I incorporated my company in Georgia because that's where I am from and I was familiar with their process. It was a bit easier than New York. I incorporated the company, which took about maybe a couple of weeks after I did all the paperwork and research because I kind of sat on it for a while. I incorporated it on my birthday, so I submitted it on my birthday. And then a couple of weeks later, we got the approval from the Attorney General's office or Secretary of State. I'm not really sure. So a lot of paperwork that was in October. And then I got our EIN, which is our tax ID number. And then I opened up our bank account, which was a very big deal for us. And then from there, we just kind of started. And I started the company with $800 for my undergraduate refund check.
That little investment took it all the way.
Child, yeah, but $800, man.
Yes. For me, I think and this is why I said in the last in forming the business section about doing your research because I didn't um, fully do my research about starting a for-profit business. Had very minimal knowledge about the for-profit world, and I knew it was possible to start a dance company for-profit. But I myself, who has a lot of development experience, for people who don't know, just development, talking about sometimes people use the word advancement, but fundraising is basically my general background in administration work outside of artistic direction. And I've been fundraising for nonprofits. So that's kind of the world I already knew. And I know that to get donations, people like to hear tax deductible. People like to see 501c3. They like to see that there's an impactful mission versus thinking about, I think it's a little difficult to think about art and think about profit. And so my brain felt comfortable with let's go the nonprofit route. And in the state of New York, you have to, of course, see if your name is taken by any other institution in the state. There's websites for that. Then you submit your articles of incorporation to the Secretary of State. You need a mission statement. It's a very quick form. And once you get your approval, which like takes a couple weeks, I think it took maybe 2 or 3 weeks to get it back. Um, you're a business. And the next step is just starting the work. 501c3 status took a lot longer. I applied in October and it didn't come back until February. And that's typically standard for most people. It takes a couple months, but the good news is that retroactively, any donations or anything you received to the company from your incorporation date is retroactively accepted as nonprofit. So anybody that made a donation from October to February was still technically tax deductible. Um, yeah, I think that would I go back and change things? Uh, I'm not sure, but I definitely know that I agree there are some very surprising holes in the nonprofit model that make it very difficult to, one, if I'm being honest, stay motivated. Two, create a sense of success for the self. I think it's easy for people to look at the company and be like, oh, wow, your company is doing so well. And you guys are doing great things and it looks amazing. But then they don't know what's going on behind the scenes, all the stress that I'm going through, the running around, the meetings I'm having, the meetings that are getting canceled, the programs, the deadlines I'm not able to meet because um, it's a beast. It's a beast in itself, even though it's a small company, it's a beast. And when I tell people the first 2 years our budget doubled, so year one to year two, the budget doubled, year three to year four, the budget doubled. And the company's growing faster than I anticipated is a little scary. People are like, what? And I'm like, yeah, it's getting to be a big gigant by big giant. But yeah, I think that if I do just thinking about school, forming a nonprofit does not mean you do not have to does not mean you can't think about profit. Nonprofits are able to generate profit. So the nonprofit model per se makes things easier in terms of taxes. If we really just want to simplify it, it just makes things easier for your company in terms of taxes, but does not mean you cannot generate profits. The only thing you cannot do is pay out dividends. You cannot pay out checks to your board. You cannot pay out checks to yourself from the profits. Those have to be generated into the company, but you can pay yourself. So those are the little differentiating things in terms of the models. I think that if I were to open another aspect of the business, not giving away anything, but it would be for profit, just so that the two institutions are able to fund each other. This is a good segue already because I have three questions in this next category, so I think it's really important. But sustaining the business. As a leader of a smaller organization, please tell us the responsibilities of your role at this moment. I know you and I have talked about this a lot, but I think people do not fully register the magnitude of the work we do as founders. And so just tell us all of the departments that you are as artistic director and CEO at this present moment.
Yeah, you when I introduce my titles, which I rarely do because it can give you a God complex. I'm being honest with you, it just can be a lot. But I think you have to say Cameron Terry, the founder, artistic director, and CEO of Shay's Nanster, because you are all of those things. And I was talking to a group of kids, and she was like, "It's heavy. It sounds heavy, and it is. It's supposed to be. It is very heavy." But those are my titles, but it's also like I'm like the board liaison. I have an awesome board chair, but me and them talk, and because I'm the founder, people come to me with challenges, or while she's busy being the chair, I'm checking in with this fundraising person to make sure that we have ideas because she's busy doing her own thing, or so that's one thing. Or I am chief marketing officer. What does the posters look like? When are we rolling stuff out? When is the photo shoot happening? What is poster number one? For our shows. I'm the CFO. What is the budget? What is the budget? Where's the money? Is it restricted? Are we going to unrestrict it? Are we moving it? What is this year's budget? What is next year's budget? Am I anticipating a deficit? Chief fundraiser, you know, you know, gotta have those meetings with those donors, whose gifts are coming in, who did not renew, who came in at a lower level, and everything artistic. So there was a time where I was talking recently with my board chair, and I was like, we're starting an advisory board. I was like, hey, my plan is for them to report to you. I would not have the capacity to manage another group of adults when we go into production because I would have my entire cast reporting to me. I would have my everybody in production, so that's lighting design, sound, scenic, whomever. They're all going to report to me. The theater itself will report to me. So directors of the theater in Atlanta or whatever, not to mention people are going to be asking about tickets. People are going to be asking about, tickets and box office. So there's so many different things because it is just you. And then as the company grows and evolves, you will start having somebody for marketing and for the box office and for concessions and for this and for that. But at the same time, then your operating budget's going to grow. And your operating budget, people, is typically how much money it costs to run your organization for a full year. And it's typically how much money you spend in a year, right? So if I want to bring on somebody for finance or bring on somebody for social media, that is a line item in our budget. So that's how your budget begins to jump because, oh, we want to add this person. Great. Now your budget is jumping. And then not only does that mean your budget is growing, but it means that you need to raise that money and then some. So if your budget is hypothetically $50,000, hypothetically, you really need to raise 100. Full transparency, you really need to raise. We're gonna be nice. You really need to raise 75 because you don't want to end your year with the deficit. You want to end your year with money in the bank. And of course, that's your budget, but it's not going to be your actual. So you may budget for 50, but in reality, it may be like 65. It may be 70, and you only have a $5,000 surplus. That is more likely, right? But I wear all these different hats and I'm able to be everywhere, but I appreciate it, though it drives me bonkers. I appreciate it because as I grow more into the CEO role and this hierarchy begins to form in my organization, I'm gonna say, well, I know the development. I know the development of I know how to fundraise. I know how to talk to this donor, or I know the best marketing rollout for this particular city, or I know how our budget comes and flows. I know the life cycle of our budget, or when we're dry for cash, and when we have a lot of cash flow coming in, because I've been in these roles, so you can better choose employees or we time to hire because you kind of know what are we solving. You can ask these questions because you've had to do it for so long. But it is no small feat. Not to mention, because me and Derick were at a point where we are, I am more so than Derick, setting a bunch of work. Derick is bringing in choreographers, so I think it's really awesome. But I'm setting work. So not only am I running all of these things, I got to come into the studio and make a dance. I got to make a dance, and I got to uphold the standard that the audience has seen in previous shows. So it balances itself out because I get an escape, but you're doing so many different things, right? But your brain kind of shifts depending on the time of the year. So right now it's tax time, so I know I got to get our 990 ready and all of that. I got to make sure that everything's closed out, and then that's fine. And then once we submit our 990, that's cross off the list. Then I'm worrying about fundraising. I'm worrying about this. So there's so many different hats. I mean, I honestly can't tell you how many hats I wear, but it is a beast. And the challenge is, nobody's going to do it. It's not going to move unless you push it. Nobody's going to file that 990 for you. Nobody's going to do these things that need to be done. And the challenge with my organization that we operate in 2 states. So that's a 990 for Georgia, and it's a 990 for New York. There's an annual registration for Georgia, and there's an annual registration for New York. So, all of the things that you have to consider when you're running an organization, there's so many different buckets and pots, rather. I think the pots is better, and you got to keep them all on the same level, because if you leave your pot on high for too long, it will begin to boil over. Similar to your organization, it will begin to kind of malfunction, run away from you like a little toddler. You got to watch it. So many hats. I mean, probably like 15, 20, if I'm being honest with you.
I was just jotting down the departments. Like, my official title is founder, executive artistic director. I used to be artistic director, but I had to add executive because there's no executive director. I am executive director. And if you don't know the difference, artistic directors are usually in charge of all the artistic side of the organization, creating the artistic vision, the artistic staff, rehearsal directors, choreographers, dancers are mostly in charge of that. Your executive director is usually in charge of your external affairs, the business side. So you think artistic side versus business side. That's your marketing, your development, your PR, your
Sure.
insurance, educational, legal, HR. That's all under executive. So because I have to wear both hats at this present moment, I adopted the title of executive artistic director. And I don't write it down, but I'm also the board treasurer. So that's I am legally responsible by the United States government in the state of New York to make sure that the fiscal responsibility of the organization is intact. That is a really big responsibility. That means the organization's tax compliance falls on my shoulders. Of course, I would love to give that job away. At this present moment, I can't. If you think about a normal organization that is well established, like the Ailey organization or these big conglomerate nonprofits that we see in the dance world, or not, where you can just talk about normal. Any business normally has HR, legal, IT, marketing, PR, finance, maintenance and facilities. If they have an educational department, education, or they have a board or investors. Nonprofits, organizations, I'm going to throw in a couple. I'm going to list that again. All of these departments: artistic, HR, legal, IT, production. That includes lighting designers, stage hands, stage managers, all of those, costuming. And I made costuming a separate department because that's a whole other thing, wardrobe. But marketing, development, or fundraising, if you familiar with both those terms, finance department, bookkeeping, accounting, budgeting, that's what that is. Maintenance and facilities, facility rentals, maintenance of post-show cleanup, striking, fine. Oh, I wrote finance twice because you see how important that is to me. Costuming, education, and board. We wear all of those hats. I got lucky because I made the investment to hire 2 staff members. I have a development associate and I have a marketing associate who work part-time. They take off a good deal of stress off my back, but I have not solely given them those departments because they rely on me, as we talked about in the earlier sections. The founding of your organization relies way heavily on you, more than you even think. So every second they're asking me, Derick, so what are we doing? What is the intention behind this post? What is the appeal language? Can you draft something? And as much as sometimes I want to be like, oh, please just write it and just like figure it out. I can't because it's my vision. I am the power. I'm the battery that this company is running off of right now. And it's hard. And it's hard to do all of these jobs and feel to stay motivated. And what kind of keeps me going is just remembering why the vision, the why of the vision, what brought me to the vision. I said I didn't want to say to create stories about fantastical things. I wanted to say something real. And so in order for me to do that, I have to take on this responsibility. I have to keep pushing forward because that is my purpose. That is my purpose, and that is my purpose of the company, is to create impact, real impact in my own way, to create a legacy. And leave something behind that is bigger than me. Um,
And
yeah,
you do it well.
that's not easy.
Yeah, and you want to do it well. We could easily run this organization. There's some out here that are like that. And we just focus on artistic. And we just choreograph dances, and that's just what we do. But because Derick and I have the knowledge, um, and the instincts and the skills, we're very attuned to what our budget is. Imaginary numbers or not, whether we have it in the bank or we're going to get it or whatever, we're very tuned about, okay, well, we don't want our budget to grow. Or if or the full cost, one of the things we're talking about at Chase Dance Theater is, the board and funders are really interested in, like, well, what is the full cost of this organization? What does it really mean to bring you on full time? What does it really mean to do a season? What does it really mean to be self-producing? And how does this change over time? And when you add an event like gala or a luncheon, or that goes into your operating budget, because now there's development, fundraising, special events. So all of these things come together, but we really want to do it well. And we really are interested in building our organization to be sustainable, which is why we have our hand in all these different pots. Because we have to. We have to lead our organization. And I think that Derick really hit it on the head. It was like, people don't really understand what it is to do what it is that we do, and then have to go into a studio and then teach a step or be vulnerable. Because not only are you the CEO and you're worrying about insurance compliance and HR and, harassment, and are we covered by this? Or, what the board is doing. You equally got to go in and program a season that people want to pay for and come see. So that is the key difference between being an artistic director and being a choreographer. And I want to be very clear. As an artistic director, you are responsible for getting butts in those seats and generating revenue and increasing the value of that organization. That is your job. You're programming the season. When you are a choreographer, you set this work and then you leave, and that's your life. Those are two different things. And I want people to be very clear. Being an artistic director and being a choreographer are not the same. They're not the same.
And not every artistic director can be a choreographer, and vice versa. Not every choreographer has the skill set to be an artistic director. I'm going to wrap it up with one question, and then we are going to end our series with something fun, which is what we like to do for Tea Talks. But I think my last question is, I guess, to tie this up, what words of advice would you give a future entrepreneur about founding a vision and carrying it out? Just to tie up what we've been talking about, just summarize something you really want to leave for a future entrepreneur.
I think it's a lot. I think that you really have to be in tune with the work that you're doing, um and your why. You got to go back to your why. And I talk about this at another interview, but it's like you have to be clear about what your vision and your mission is, and not just like, oh, my vision is this, and you have a paragraph, or you have a mission, it's a couple of words. No, but like, why are you here? Because when you have to go in front of a boardroom or donor or corporate sponsor or whatever the case may be, as the founder, nobody's going to have that spark and abracadabra, that magic, other than you. And if you have to be able to tap into that. If there's any doubt in your mind that you don't know why you're doing this thing, or if it's not really for you, then I would suggest you highly investigate that or reconsider a different field. Maybe you choreograph, or you teach a bit more until you really figure out why you're going to embark on this work. Because the organizations that I've seen that's been able to thrive is that when that mission, that vision, that magic is able to become like a residue, a dust, a magic, if you will, and you can spread it against others. It can't be something that you want to keep to yourself. It has to be something that resonates across, people. And when times get hard, and when it's time to fundraise or do the budget or whatever the case may be, when you're back up against the wall, you got to fall back on that why. Why you're here, why you're doing the thing that you're trying to do. So I think that really being in touch with your why is the biggest thing that I would give to a budding entrepreneur, because the budget and the finance and the marketing and the development, all of those things will come with practice and time. But you can't fake the magic. You can't fake the why.
Yeah. I think for me, I think authenticity, and that's one of my company's words, authenticity. And I think authenticity is really important. And I say authenticity in the space of you need to be authentic to you and what your desires and what your beliefs are. Because if you are able to tap into that, then your passion comes out. And when your passion comes out, you already know your why. If you're authentic to what you want and what you want to say, your why is just natural. It's second nature. If you feel like you have to force a why or sort of construct a why, then you're probably not doing it for the right reasons. You need to know exactly what calls to you, because when this work gets grueling and tough, you're not going to be able to make it through.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're passionate about what you're saying and what you're doing, and you believe in it, if you believe in your vision, it is going to be permeable. It is going to be adoptable. People are going to be drawn in. People are going to be sucked into your vision. They will also become advocates for your work. They will also become advocates for your vision. And you cannot do this. Unfortunately, we cannot do it alone. We have to have advocates for our work. We have to have staff members that are not just there for paychecks. They have to also believe in what you're saying and what you're doing, especially because you're starting something from scratch. The money's not there. When we say, I'm starting something from scratch, what we're really saying is, I'm starting something with $0. I'm starting something with $0. That's what scratch means. There was no investor. There was nobody saying, here's $1 million for you to start a company. I'm starting it from the ground up. I'm starting from $0, and I'm trying to get to that $1 million, that $1 million+ dollars. And And so, yeah, it takes people to believe in yourself, and for people to believe in you. And when they believe in you, and not just you, but your institution, the magic happens. And then the work kind of speaks for itself. When you continue just operate in passion, people see it, and then they come up to you and they're like, I was so touched by this, and this is what I got from it. And you have to
Mhm.
do less of explaining your what, why, who, when, where. Um, then whatever nuggets you share with them about those categories, then it's even more opportunity for them to become invested with the work and to integrate with your family, your company's
Right.
family.
Right.
Woo, that was a great way to top that off. We have 6 minutes, and I have 5 questions of Georgia trivia for you.
Oh
I'm
Lord.
testing your home knowledge.
Oh God. Okay. We'll see.
Let me get my stopwatch.
Hope you don't hope I don't get my Georgia peach card revoked. Don't be mad at me, y'all. Ooh. I hope it's some easy stuff. It's gonna be
I
no
tried. I
Derek,
tried
it's
to I
gonna be
tried to pick
hard.
some easy stuff. I hope they don't stump you too bad. Okay.
Let's see.
Question number one. Which street name is used 30 times in Atlanta?
Peachtree.
Aaron, Sherman, Peachtree, or Fulton?
Peachtree.
Correct. Where in Georgia is the largest infantry training center located? Atlanta, Fort Pierce, Savannah, or Fort Benning?
Ooh, Fort Pierce.
Fort Benning.
I'm gonna know
Which
that.
river forms part of the border between Atlanta and Georgia? The Yellow River, Alabama River, Chattahoochee River, or Tennessee River?
The Chattahoochee.
Correct. Okay.
Maybe put the bodies
What?
in there.
What is the oldest city in the state of Georgia? Savannah, Macon, Atlanta, or Noonan?
I don't know. Is it uh, maybe Savannah?
Correct, Savannah. Last one. What are the
Chatham County.
state bird and state tree of Georgia? The eastern goldfinch and oak, cardinal and tulip tree, the brown thrasher and live oak, or the ring-necked pheasant and Black Hills spruce?
I have no idea. What say it? Can you say them again?
Eastern goldfinch and oak, cardinal and tulip tree, brown thrasher and live oak tree, or the ring-necked pheasant and Black Hills spruce?
Is it the Thrasher?
Yes, thrasher and live oak. Okay. You know your state. Only
There was
one
a
wrong.
hockey team. I think we had a hockey team and they were the Thrasher. So I was trying to put it together.
Um, Thank you, Cameron, for joining us today, and thank you, viewers and listeners, for tuning into MDP Talks. Before we sign off, Cameron, tell us what's next for Shades Dance Theater and how we can support you.
You can support us by following us on Instagram at Shades Dance Theater. We are getting ready for our 2024 programming year. We're in the early stages of planning that. So be on the lookout for New York events and Atlanta events. And I hope to have this thing rocking sooner rather than later. So yeah.
Thank you guys again, and we'll see you soon for the next one.